Hi everyone. I'm really excited to welcome you all to this hackathon. I'm particularly excited because I've been living here in Lagos on the African continent for about a year now. I grew up in Ghana, but I left and went to the States for college. And for about 15 years now, I've been working at Microsoft as an engineer. For about 15 years, I was working at Microsoft as an engineer. I still work at Microsoft, but now I've moved here to Africa to start an engineering team. And it just so happens that the team I'm now running here is Microsoft's Mixed Reality Africa team. So here in Lagos, we have a team of engineers that are working on mixed reality product solutions for Microsoft, for people in the entire world. And it's exciting to me because mixed reality is transformative technology. In my opinion, mixed reality technology, virtual reality, and augmented reality have an ability to build experiences that are much more immersive than the ones we have today. These types of immersive technologies are even more important today as we're separated and unable to travel as much as we could before. Being able to connect with people either using virtual reality or augmented reality is actually being very, very helpful in maintaining our ability to be productive as a global populace. And so I think it's critical to continue to figure out ways that augmented reality and virtual reality can help us in this regard. But thinking about the future and thinking about some of the cutting edge technologies that are coming out of various companies working in this space, it's clear to see that mixed reality is more than just a way for us to connect with people. The things that devices can do today, most virtual reality headsets can do some sort of hand tracking so that the input is much more intuitive. You're not learning how fast you can type on a keyboard or learning about the mouse and what it means to right click a mouse and what it means to hold control when you're right clicking. Instead, you're interacting with computers and with the environment in a much more natural way using virtual reality. If you want to see something, you turn your head. That's the natural way you would interact with things in the real world. And then there's the perceptiveness that computers have today, which I think is pretty incredible as well. And I think that the perceptive capabilities of various devices, mixed reality devices like the HoloLens, other virtual reality headsets, that's something that I think is going to increase tremendously in the future. And I'm looking forward to seeing ways folks leverage that in the hackathon. Because I think that's one of the areas that's is really key. And let me see if I can share my screen here. Oh, I can't share. Judith, is it possible for me to share a screen, a deck I have?
Yes, just give me a second. We'll make that possible. Are you able to share now?
Let me give it a shot and see.
Okay.
Yes, let's say share screen, and then I'll minimize that. There we go. And then Judith, if you could just let me know when you can see it.
I see it now.
All right, let me just, I'm probably not going to go through all the slides, but I put together a couple of slides so that I could also, partly because it helps me keep track of what I wanted to say. As I mentioned already, I've been at Microsoft for over 15 years, now here in Africa running the mixed reality engineering organization. And a lot of folks talk about like, what is it about mixed reality? Microsoft calls it mixed reality. A lot of folks separate augmented reality and virtual reality. For us, we view it as a continuum. And in the future, I expect that you're going to see devices that will be able to do everything from augmented reality to virtual reality. But today, if you think about some of the applications of existing technologies, things like the HoloLens are being used by folks in building design. They're being used by people preparing for operating procedures, physicians. People are using them to teach medical students. The ability for these devices to allow us to collaborate and collectively view things, I think, is quite powerful. And the HoloLens is, in my mind, one of the most cutting edge devices. I know I work in the technology, so as part of that, I'm supposed to be very positive about it. But I genuinely believe that we are going to see through all of these devices a new generation of computing. And so I'm very excited that we have a hackathon of folks all over the continent who are learning more about what it means to develop applications for this. So I'm not going to try and play these videos because that always results in things taking forever. But I have some videos. Maybe I'll share them with Judith and she can send links to folks after the fact. I think virtual reality is really incredible as well. Over the past year, the number of folks getting into virtual reality as a result of being cramped up at home has been quite incredible. The growth in sales have shown that. But a lot of folks are using this to be able to completely separate themselves from being cooped up at home and seeing the same people every day. And I think that's an incredible thing that virtual reality brings to the table. If you look at some of the innovations, again, this is a video. Let me click it. I don't think it's gonna. I don't want to try and stream over this network that I have, but HP has a new virtual reality headset coming out. They just released the Reverb, but they've announced the Omnicept headset, which is an extension of their G2 headset. And this headset includes eye tracking, facial cameras, as well as a heart sensor built right into the VR headset, which allows folks to get more data about what they're doing when they're using VR. I don't know how many of you have played Beat Saber or any of these other VR games that give you some exercise, but when you're done with it, you're gonna work up a sweat, and it's kind of cool to know that now you can actually track your heart rate and learn more about your own performance as you're doing that. And I think in that space, there is a world where we're going to see more and more use of VR in healthcare in particular. So as I said, I run a team called the Mixed Reality Africa team. There's a bunch of engineers, and one of the things that we focus on is enhancing the power of mixed reality, whether it's VR or AR, using Microsoft's Azure cloud. So Microsoft has this massive, we call it the world's computer. It's actually thousands, hundreds of thousands of computers around the world. But by using the power of these computers, we can take some of these technologies to even greater lengths. And some of the examples that we've worked on are remote rendering. Is a great example of that. Anyone who's really dug deep into doing stuff with VR will notice a couple of things. You can get really simple, lightweight, and cheap VR solutions, and the graphics cards are not that great on any of those things. The HoloLens graphics card even is the same as a mobile device graphics card. If you compare that to what you have in big desktop computers, there's a little bit of a disconnect, but we can bridge that gap using our remote rendering services, which let folks be able to use GPUs in Azure to be able to power experiences on your HoloLens device. Two other technologies that are really interesting are spatial anchors are really critical. If you're using the anchor technologies from either Google or Apple, it's not as easy to share them across multiple devices, across multiple platforms. So we have an Azure service that makes it easier for devices that are participating together to align and track their position relative to one another, which is something that you need if you're going to do augmented reality. And the last one, object anchors, which is relatively new, is one that I'm incredibly proud of because our team here in Lagos actually contributed pretty heavily to the object anchors technology, and it was just announced in September. Object anchors is actually being used in cases where folks are trying to align holograms to things in the real world. So this image that I have here is an example of remote rendering. On the right-hand side, you have a image that doesn't have a large number of polygons, and so the detail and the fidelity is lost. On the left-hand side, you have something that was rendered using our remote rendering technology, using the power of the cloud, and you can see much higher detail. Technologies like this are going to allow folks to do a lot more with these capabilities of AR and VR moving forward. I'm not going to go deep into anchors, but anyone who's playing around with augmented reality has already played around with one of the anchoring systems out there. Object anchors and spatial anchors are an ability for folks to use these anchors in the cloud, and that allows folks to do things that before couldn't have been done, and allows you to build much more collaborative experiences. So here's an example of Toyota, where they have a number of holograms that are aligned on top of a car, so that you can see where the wires are supposed to be. And this allows an engineer to very quickly look at the wiring harness of a car and assess whether there's a problem with it without needing to go and look at a book or pick up a manual and turn to the right page. And this type of productivity enhancement is something that makes large manufacturers very excited, and folks managing large factories very excited about the potential of this technology. So I'm really incredibly excited, as I said, to see what comes out of this hackathon. I'm a huge fan of these types of events, and if I wasn't traveling, I'd probably be trying to get involved myself and see what I could put together in my spare time. I'm always excited to see the innovation that comes when folks who have not been playing around with our stuff start touching it and learning more about it and seeing what they can do with it. The diversity of thought that comes from hackathons is something that I'm in particular very, very excited about. So I want to thank everyone for taking the time to participate in this hackathon and making sure that they're available to get this going. I know some folks have been working already for a long time, and I'm very excited to hear more about what happened and how things went for everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hoop. It's been such a pleasure to have you here. Oh, hello. You got some company. Are you about to rush up, or can you take a question or two?
I can take a couple questions, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So everyone, does anybody have a question for Hoop? And if you do, you can just go ahead and type that out in the chat. But Hoop, while we wait for any of those questions to come in, I'd love to ask, what are you kind of like most looking forward to in the next year from a mixed reality perspective in Africa?
Oh, that's a really good question. Can I give two answers instead of one?
Of course.
I think one of the areas that I've always been fascinated about is the growth of other devices besides headsets that can do augmented reality, and I think the ability of that to make the technology more equitably accessible is really interesting to me. So I'm excited about seeing solutions that leverage that to allow folks here to make use of computer perception from their phones. In what specific applications, I don't know, but I'm curious to see what happens there, because I think there's an opportunity that's being unlocked. I mean, you look at the new iPhone and it's got a LiDAR sensor on it. That's pretty incredible. And I'm already seeing folks do some pretty crazy things with that sensor. And so I'm excited about those new sensors that are coming out. And then similarly, in the headset space, I think that we're seeing a lot of folks start to drive towards more collaborative capabilities. You're seeing like people trying to figure out how they can have office meetings and stuff in VR. You're seeing quite a number of folks trying to go for the higher end of that, where they're saying, oh, I'm going to have this virtual reality concert. I don't know if anybody caught Burna Boy's concert last week, but Burna Boy did a VR concert that was pretty exciting. And so I think that we're going to see a lot more of that. And in particular, I'm excited to see the growth of VR entertainment. So those are the two areas that I think are really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Hoop, for sharing that. Okay, so we have a couple of questions that have come in. So I'm just going to kind of like really quickly get to them. So someone asks, when rendering over the cloud, is there a lag in real time that's determined by the capabilities of the network used to connect?
That is an excellent question. So the way that works is there's a minimum network that if your network isn't fast enough, it's just not going to work. They start streaming, and once you start receiving the stream, a bit of it has been buffered, and you don't have to worry about any issues with your network being slow. I mean, to a certain extent, but one of the challenges with remote rendering is it's not a one-way stream. There's a stream from the cloud server in the cloud that's sending you what you're looking at, but if you're wearing a VR headset or a mixed reality headset and you move, the rendering system needs to know that your position has changed. And so we have to stream up your head tracking information to the cloud in real time. Otherwise, we can't actually render it and think you'll move and things won't move. And so you need a good low latency network in both directions, actually, which is a little bit limiting because not everyone has the fastest internet at all. And in this case, not only do you need fast internet, you need it in both directions. Today, the price point for remote rendering is such that most of the customers who are paying for it have really, really good internet. But this is a problem we need to tackle if you want to make this available for, say, Xbox games, for example. An Xbox game is going to need to be able to do this over really basic connections. And so when you think about some of the other technologies coming out of Microsoft, we have something called xCloud, which is streaming for Xboxes. They do things slightly different from remote rendering because of this difference in the needs and scenarios. Hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hoop. Okay, I'm going to try and sneak one last one in and try and do a double. So someone wants to know what kind of software you utilize in your work. And then there's someone else who also wanted to know what you would recommend for a beginner. How do you get started with mixed reality?
Ah, that's a good question. So my team, interestingly, if you're doing a lot of stuff with mixed reality, chances are you're going to use Unity. I mean, you can use Unreal and other things, and they're all great. But if you're using Unity, you're going to use C#. That's the primary language of Unity. It turns out, coincidentally, all of the services my team writes, they're also written in C#. So from a language standpoint, most of my team is writing C#. I do have folks who are using other things like C++, and because we work on platforms, we sometimes have to support it all. So I may have a guy who needs to do Unity, another guy needs to do the Unreal thing. Someone might need to know WebVR for something we're working on. And in general, we'll pick up whatever tool we need to, but the one we use the most is C#. We write a lot of the services stuff here, but also I've got some Unity guys, and that's also C#. As far as a beginner, I gotta say, I haven't found any system or platform out there that has quite the wealth of learning resources in this space as Unity does. I mean, if you go to Unity, like they've got tutorials and docs on everything, and I highly recommend that as a good place to start learning about the space. Microsoft has a number of great tutorials as well for our platform in mixed reality, but between those two, there's a wealth of resources out there for getting started. And again, if you're going to use Unity and you're going to be using Microsoft stuff, I recommend learning C# as well as a start. Sorry, I think was there a second question? No, those are the two questions, how to get started and what my team uses.
Yes, that is right. That is right. There's so many questions coming in. You really have people excited about this.
I wish I could stay on and answer more questions, but if there's another offline async forum of some kind, or if Judith, you want to collect more questions and I can try and answer them asynchronously, I'm happy to try and do that. I love the enthusiasm.
Fantastic. So I'll definitely get those other questions across to you. But Hoop, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. And we wish you safe travels.
Thank you so much for having me. My pleasure. Good luck, everyone. Thank you.